What's up, everybody? It's the Taco Show. First off, I want to thank God and I want to thank the universe for giving me a positive platform to express my opinion and give you this information. Now, let's jump right into it. Today, I seen something, and I won't say anyone's name specifically, but I was reading some posts on Facebook and I realized somebody said that they like to get their spiritual information from the Bible, and they really don't want to take anything other than information that can be proved through Scripture. And I respect that opinion. I truly do. And I'm not to upset anybody. I'm not out to upset anybody or be disrespectful. I'm just here to expand your mind and give you other hypotheses, which are theories about how things can happen. Now we'll barely scratch the surface today because this is a complex thing. And when I say that, I want you to understand that this is a complex subject, and God is also a complex subject. And sometimes we put limitations on God, and we just make him out to be a big booming voice from the sky that tells us to go to church and live our lives right. And it's so much more to it. Now we can use the word and the scriptures, aka the Bible, the King James Version. I got one right here for everybody. And I will be getting some information out of there. But I want y'all to know that the Bible and understanding God is so much more than just scripture. You have to be able to understand history, period. You have to be able to understand geography. You have to be able to understand principalities, which is spirituality. You have to be able to understand mathematics. You have to be able to understand architecture. There's many aspects and elements of understanding who God is and what the history of mankind is. And you have to take all this information, and you have to also look at other different points of view, such as different religions, in order to get the full explanation and come up with your own resolutions and answers. I'm going to give you some examples of geography that you have to know. From the beginning, you have Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. And they also had a son named Seth. Now, Cain killed Abel. Cain was a farmer. Abel was a shepherd. They both made offerings to God. Cain offered a sheath of corn that was really worthless. Abel offered a fat lamb. Cain became jealous and he buried his brother. He was kicked out of the land where he was at, which is the Garden of Eden, and he was told to wander east of the Garden of Eden. Now, geologically wise, you have to understand where the Garden of Eden is. The Garden of Eden is in present day Iraq. Yes, Iraq, the place where Saddam Hussein was the president and George W. Bush ousted him, claiming the weapons of mass destruction, which were none were found, and we just basically took their country over. It's right next to Iran. So anything east of Iraq is going to be Iran, um, Afghanistan, China, Mongolia, you know. So when I start mentioning things like that, well, I'm going to stay on geography right now. Also, when you read the scripture, you have to know where these cities are in the Bible. You have to know about places like, let me get my notes. First off, Nazareth, Jerusalem, Bethlehem. You have to know that Jerusalem is a holy city for the Jews, for Christians, and for Muslims. I want you to research the Dome of the Rock. That's a Muslim holy place. Um, Jerusalem is also where the Last Supper was held at, Jesus' Last Supper, if you're familiar with that. Um, there's a place called Armageddon where the kings of the earth in the last days of Revelation will be gathered for the biggest war that the world has ever seen. And if you don't know where Armageddon is, what will you know to look for? Geographically, again. Um, Armageddon is going to take place in a place called Megiddo. And it's actually 20 miles south of Haifa. And it's a place where Hills is, and it's located in Israel. You have to understand where the country Israel is, and you have to understand how they got that country in the first place and how they were slaughtered in the Holocaust by Hitler. And that brings on history. You have to know who the Antichrist people were before the real Antichrist. Hitler, Stalin with the Russians. This is history. Napoleon, King Nebuchadnezzar. All of these people that plotted against God's people who were the Hebrews. You have to understand that history. You have to understand the Chinese dynasties, the Ottoman empires, the Roman empires, the British empires. You have to understand these people's places in history. The Sumerians, the Mayans. You have to understand that. So now we move on to spirituality. You have to understand spirituality also. You can't just go by the scriptures. You have to understand that what principalities are. Principalities are evil things that engage us in spiritual warfare that rule over this earth because God gave them permission to do so. You have to understand what a fallen angel is. And you have to understand that goes back in to geology, that goes back in to supernatural and spirituality. You have to understand those things, not just scripture. You have to understand, like I said, architecture. When we talk about Solomon, which was the son of David, and Solomon built the temple, and the Bible, the Bible itself gave the measurements of Solomon's temple. And Solomon's temple, let me find the measurements. Anyway, you can find the exact measurements of Solomon's temple, which was the first temple built to worship God. And it'll give you it's so many cubic feet high, so many cubic feet long. All of that is architecture, which that plays into the Masons, which are builders, and that plays into the pyramids, which they can't figure out how they were built, which ties into the Egyptians, which ties into Moses being Hebrew, but able to pass for an Egyptian and living his life as an Egyptian prince. All of this stuff coincides and is intertwined into history. And these are things that you must understand in order, just like the number 666. It says in the Bible that the number 666 in Revelations 13:18 calls for wisdom. Let the person with insight calculate the number of the beast, for this is the number of man, 666. Now, you have to understand mathematics in order to calculate that number of 666. You have to understand God made a DNA code, which is of numbers. And everybody is coded in different ways. Mathematics equals language. Mathematics equals culture. And I'm only scratching the surface. I just want people to understand that they have to be able to go to their spiritual leaders and ask these people these kind of questions in order to understand this. It's a lot of people that don't know that there are other missing Bible books, like the book of Enoch, that speaks of spells and rituals and magic. You have to understand that Noah came from Seth, and Methuselah, which is the oldest man in the Bible, was Noah's grandfather. And Noah was chosen to build the ark and grab a male and a female creature of each animal race and bring purity to the world, because fallen angels had came to the earth and mingled with earthly women and created mixed children. And it was not the approval of God. Now, ask your spiritual leaders about this. This is all in the Bible. In order to understand that, we have to understand spirituality and supernatural things. We can't just say, I'm going to read the Bible and interpret it for what it is, because when we get to the things that we just cannot fathom in our mind, because it's way out of our realms of explanation, we cannot disregard that information. We have to hold steady and fast to what God gives us, all of the information. That's why it's not going to be that many people that's able to go to heaven. Now, if you don't have the information to be able to follow God's instructions, whether it's historical, geographical, spiritual, mathematical, you have to use all of these elements to figure out what your purpose is at the end of this lifetime with God. And like I said before, I'm not trying to disrespect nobody and make it to where I'm trying to throw you off of your beliefs, because you're free to believe in whatever you want to believe into. But through my study, these are the things I have come to know. And I grew up in the church to where my ideology was believe in the scriptures. My pastor's going to come. He's going to give me a sermon. It's a message from God. But as a person who wants answers, I need facts. I need scientific facts. I need information that I can research for myself and draw my own conclusion. So I want you to be able to do the same thing. I'm not going to take up y'all's time because we can get into so many things, but I just want you to understand that it's so many other things other than the Bible that we have to understand in order to get the full gist of what's going on right now. And then when you take biblical study and you take current events and you intertwine the two, you come up with prophecy. In order to know, just like I just told you that the Garden of Eden is in present day Iraq. Now think about that. Think about why we going to war in the Middle East. Think about where all of the oil is. All of the oil is in the same place that all of these biblical stories took place in. Now you start linking things together and you take the past and bring it to the future. But I want you guys to do your own research. I thank you for sticking with me. This is some really good information that you can research on your own. And this is the Taco Show. I'm out. Bless you.